itself to commit the crime. And I give you an example for a crime, like if you are using your computer to send a blackmail to someone, then the computer, or you hack to hack to someone, or to initiate a denial of service, then the computer is part of this. If you use the computer as a tool, if you're using your computer as a tool for a crime, it's going to be a cyber crime. Okay, guys. Type. What is the key steps? Here, this is more detailed, what you need to do every time you have a case. So identify the computer crime. So what we have right now, we have a corporate espionage, we have blackmailing, we have extortions, do we have someone using a computer to do drug dealings? So you need to identify which computer crime is done. Okay, you need to collect the initial evidence, as I mentioned, the date and time, who's involved, what kind of systems involved. So they still didn't touch any systems, you're just collecting information about what happened, okay? And then obtain court or warrant or for seizure if required. That means if you're gonna do an investigation that eventually go to the court, and you really need to get a permission to search someone's computers, you really need to get a court approval. They call it this search warrant. You perform first responder procedures. The first responder procedures here is basically to go to the system, identify this is what's happening in these systems, and try to seize the evidence from the crime scene. So seizing the evidence to look at the processes running on this computer, to look at the memory running, to look at the connection from this computer, to try to check the date and time, for example, to talk to the person who was using the computer at that time. So this is all seizing the evidence, to take some picture of the computer and the surrounding area, okay? And then you need to transport evidence to the forensics lab. So basically, if you cannot really conduct your forensics on this computer right away in this place, you need to have a proper place to do your forensics lab. I will show you an example of how forensics labs looks like in 1 second. Once you have the computer in the forensics lab, you need to shut down the computer, and you need to take the hard drive out and start to do a copy stream bit for the hard drive. And we mentioned that we need to do bit by bit image, which is a typical identical image for what you have in the original website. You should also take an MD5 hashing for all of these images to make sure that later on to the judge, I have image, I have MD5. You can really prove that the original data has not been changed. Okay, guys. And then you're really in the collection phase, which is this phase specifically, the collection of initial evidence. You really need to look at what system were involved in this. So if you have 2 machines, for example, you really need to identify this and list all of them. Okay. The other thing here, for each system, obtain the relevant order of volatility. We'll talk about the order of volatility in 1 second, but the order of volatility means our data from this system. Some of these data are volatile. It can really disappear once the system is shut down or rebooted, and some are really is not gonna be changed if we restarted or rebooted or even disconnected the network. So I really need to establish this because I wanted really to focus in early beginning of my investigation to get a copy of this data which is more volatile. Because if maybe let's say that if you have one criminal who's using the computer right now and he knows you are here to maybe to start an investigation or to catch him, he can restart the computer. You can destroy the data in the memory by restarting or rebooting this computer. So you lose a lot of important data. So you really need to focus in trying to get this data in order, and the order is related to volatility. So if the data can volatile, then you need to start with. If the data is going to be stay there for a long time, then you can later on take it to tab and start to collect the data. Also record the system clock. So this is very important. This is what will establish the chain of custody later on. So you need to be precise about date and time, and we'll show you how to do this, how to conduct date and time, because you can get the data time of the system, okay, running a command. You can get it remotely from the system also running a command. Okay, you wanted to see what kind of current activity on this system by using the date and time. So this is important to establish the date and time, collect the evidence from people who are part of the incidents. So if someone is using his computer and then find malicious activity happening on this computer, you can ask him. This testimony can be later on used in the court. So you need to really talk to the people who's using the system and understand what was happening. And even if you can record it, it would be much better. Capture the electronic serial of the drive and another user accessible host specific data. So this is basically if you are using if you started to really look into you are looking at a computer or a hard drive, if you can take a serial a screen of the serial number and the serial number for the laptop, it's also important. Write, protect, and various check all the media to maintain the integrity of the media. Means write protect means you are not allowing the hard drive to be to add more data, and also do a viruses check. So you really wanted to make sure that no one modifying data in the hard drive, because later on you will use it as an evidence. Okay, guys. So here is how to build a forensics workstation. Okay, as you can see here, you can build it in a lab, you can build it in your computers over here. So what is the main thing is that you really need to have in your lab workstation or forensics workstation. You need to have some hardware-based local and remote network drive duplication. Means you need to have the tools that it will duplicate the hard drive. Okay, I will show you some of these tools. Just 1 second, you guys allow me. So this one over here, this is where you can duplicate the hard drive. It's basically a device that you connected to the hard drive, and it take an image from the hard drive and save it here. And later on, once the image is here, you can open your in-case FTK software and start to analyze this hard drive. So this is, we call it duplication cable or duplication duplication material. And as you can see here, this is specifically this specific device will have like a power connection, so you can give the hard drive a power, because you know our hard drive needs power to be turned on, and also a cable for data, which is be connected to the hard drive here to get the data back and forth, like sorry, from the hard drive to your computers. So this is what kind of connection we are saying can be used for duplication the hard drive. Also, you need to have image and the file integrity. Validate the image and file integrity. Once you have the image in your computer, you can create the MD5 hashing to later on to validate that you didn't really modify the original message. So this is also, you need to have an MD5 generator or MD5 calculator, so it can create the image MD5 once you finish. Identify date and time when the files have been modified, accessed, and created. Identify the deleted files. So in some cases, you know, especially in cybersecurity, guys, and especially in hacking. Okay, the attackers usually they will try to delete the logs or get rid of the logs because they have a mission to clean their tracks. And we mentioned that every time hack a system, he will leave some tracks in this system, whether this is in network, whether this in the memory, whether this in as a files in the TIM files. So with any accident or with any hacking, you will leave some small evidence. So what the attacker, they know that once they compromise the system, there is some logs somewhere in the security logs are really showing what happened exactly. So the attacker will be good in deleting these files, making sure that you really get rid of these files. But you cannot really get rid of files in operating system and Windows easily. there is tools also can recover these deleted files. Why it's also deleted files is important. Also, sometimes you have someone who's doing something maliciously in his computers, and as soon as he knows that someone are coming to to arrest him, they will start to delete files from this hard drive. They will not have the time to take it out and destroy it physically, so they will start to delete files. So we should get tools that will allow us to really recover these files. Okay, support the removable media means if your workstation can allow to connect to different removable media, whether it's USB, whether it's a hard drive. So you need to have support for this, and then isolate, analyze free drive space. So this is also important in your investigation. This is how the what you okay, guys. So this is the forensics labs, how it looks like. So you'll have maybe something like this. This is the forensic labs for the Department of Defense. So as you can see, they have camera systems. They have already disks for the engineers, and each disk is equipped with different tools. So in my previous, where I used to work, we used to have a forensics lab, and you have a bench where you have one specific computer here with the tools installed for mobile forensics, one another disk for hardware and computer forensics, one for laptop, one for one with an extra storage to do all the imaging on this specifically machine. So you have different machine, and every one of these machines are doing different thing, or maybe all of them are doing the same thing. It depends about your environment. And again, you can have toolkits like this where you add a hard drive, and these toolkits will be connected using wires to a laptop, as we seen here. You can also do a forensics for mobile, because we mentioned that mobiles is really good involved in a lot of attacks right now, to the point that I was reading the news yesterday, and they said, you know what, the British intelligence, they found out that the prime minister, which is just resigned in the UK, when she used to be the foreign minister, her phone was hacked by Russian intelligence, and they know a lot of the secrets about the foreign ministers before she become the prime ministers. So this is the new thing. So the phone is now becoming really involved. How did they know about these attacks? It's not because they are just find out. They took this phone. They started to analyze this phone in digital forensics lab. They found evidence that the Russian were spying on her phone, and that's why they come up with this news yesterday. So mobile forensics is becoming thing. Someone is using his mobile to do illegal trafficking for kids or whatever, or doing really bad stuff. You can get his phone and start to look at his WhatsApp chats, SMSs, his last phone calls, and I'm sure that you guys have seen this is already in the movies. And again, you can have your computer forensics even in the cars. So this is if you have a city or an area where you don't have a computer forensics lab, appropriate lab, so you can build a car like this with all the equipment and with all the tools, and you start to send it over to a city where you don't have this. I think this is a great idea, especially if you implement it as a private business. You have a car with a digital forensics engineer, and companies can call you if they have issues to investigate. If you don't have the team, this is very important. And again, here, guys, it's giving you a simple recommendations. Okay, how to secure this lab from someone internally to go inside your lab. So this is basically, you should be only having there should be only one entrance to the forensics lab, so there is no windows. But if you have a windows, then you need to secure the windows to make sure it's closed all the time. Okay, also maintain a logbook, which is basically who entered the forensics lab, what is his title, did he do exactly. This is basically a logbook, because in the forensics lab we have the real evidence. So if someone unauthorized went inside and started to manipulate the evidence, then it's a game over for the evidence. We cannot trust it anymore. Okay, place an intrusion alarm systems on this lab. So if someone managed to get in without a proper authorization, without a proper key, this alarm will start to do this. Is the detection techniques, and finally to maintain this lab in a good situation, even if there's a fire, then you should use firefighting equipment in a good proper maintenance. And in the firefighting equipment here, you cannot get firefighting equipment with water or any acid that can destroy basically the evidence. So you need to get a specific firefighting suppression system that can really stop the fire without destroying. So this is awesome. So here we'll look at the collecting volatile information. So what is the volatile information? So back is here. Okay, any data can be easily modified or lost when we are losing electricity. So if the system has been shut down or rebooted, this data will be gone. Okay, and why this data is important? This is the second point here, because this data, especially what is happening right now in the memory, or what happening right now as a connection to outside the net status of your computer, this can determine what's happening right now in your computer. If your computer is under attack, okay, it can, the network connections can show you what is the IP address of the attacker and what is the IP address it's connecting, which port it's connecting to. Okay, so if you lose this data, guys, you lose very important information. So if you start your computer now, you lost the communication, you lost the data in the memory, you lost which process the attacker are using right now to really spy on your systems. So it's really important data that you really need to take care of it. Okay, volatile data is registers, cache, and memory. If you guys doesn't know what is the difference between them, I just made this small diagram over here. You can see there's two types of memory in your computers. Memory, I'm talking about memory, not hard drive yet. So we have RAM and we have ROM. Okay, so basically ROM is the one that does have it's not volatile, so it stay. This is where it's connected to the motherboard, and it does have the initial sequence for booting and checking your hardware devices. We have the RAM. This is what we use for our application to run. We have two different types of RAM. Some of them called DRAM, dynamic RAM. So the dynamic RAM, and one of them called static RAM. So the dynamic RAM is we used as a memory in our computers. That's why sometimes when you go and buy a computer, it will tell you this is a DDR RAM. I don't know how many gigabytes. So this
Sherry?
data, you need to check the data in cache and RAM specifically. Okay, so what kind of volatile data I'm looking at? I'm looking what is the system time right now before when the attacks took place. Okay, so this is important. Don't restart your computer. Don't shut down the computer, because this is going to change a lot of stuff. Okay, I wanted also in this specific time to look at the logged in users. So who logged in? Okay, sorry, Abdulaziz. I think it's working right now, Abdulaziz. Okay, so logged in users mean who is logged to this machine right now, because sometimes the attacker guys are really moving literally within the network. So he moved from a web server to the database server. So I wanted to really check who is logged in remotely to the database server. You can run a command like net sessions, and you can see all the sessions connected right now. If you restart the machine, the connection will be lost, and you will not see who is connected remotely. So logged in user is important. Okay, open files, who is opening files remotely or within this computer. This is also an indication for what's happening. Okay, network information means what kind of connection I have to the external world, what kind of ARP connection I have, what kind of routing I have on my machine right now. So this is all important. Network connection I mentioned. Process information. This is means the application running right now on my machine, and this is exactly, you can see it from the task manager or the task list in your machine. You can get more specific tools like a process explorer to see each process running in your machine right now. And sometimes the attacker is like really jumping from a process to process or creating a new process in your machine. So if you have a glimpse of what process is running right now, you can detect if one of these processes are suspicious. Also, you can see which process are mapped to a connection to the outside. Okay, so maybe this process that the attacker are using right now are connecting a certain application to the external network connectivity. So you can tell, I have seen this process, it's an application running, and also this application are communicating with someone externally. So this is also important. You can see how many, you can see how what is the application is running and their memory. You can look at the network status, what connection you have. You can look at the clipboard content, service running on this machine, command history, because the attacker sometimes they like to use something called leading on LAN. So they started to run command line on the machine. So the command line history is going to be, when you restart this machine, you're going to lose it. So I wanted also to have also a copy of this. Mapped drives mean if your computer all of a sudden are mapping a different drive from another computer. So this is also important because the attacker they use mapping to see the other computer data in the same hard drive. So it's also, you need to look at this. Look at also shares. One of the things that attacker they love to do is to see if there is an open share, and if they find an interesting open share, they will open it and they will see what is inside. One of the attacks that remind me was Uber attack. The Uber attack, once this kid compromised the machine, started to look at the shared drives until he found a shared drive with all the credential to AWS. Once he found this credential, he compromised the AWS also network. So also the attacker likes like this thing. So if you are investigating, and for sure, if you restarted your computer, if you rebooted your computer, all the shares that you open with a different system will be also lost. So you need to get also a copy of all the shares. So this is what we call it, the volatile information. And what we mean by volatile, once we reboot it or once we restart it, we will lose this data. So one of the main jobs of the investigator here, guys, he start his priority to jump and get as much as he can from this list. He need to get the processes, the network connection, whose user is logged in, what kind of processes map to a network outside, what kind of shares that someone is opening. So this is the most important thing. You can do as much as you can. So how can we do this? There is so many tools to do this. So in order to get the system date and time, guys, right in the beginning, so you can see this, you can just run date and time, but you also date and time, maybe you don't want really to interact with a machine at all. So in this case, you can run command remotely, okay, from your machine, from the investigator machine. So this is the screen here, guys, are from the investigator machine, okay? And he run a net statics server, okay, server statics 4, and then he specify which machine he wanted to get the date and time, and this is gonna be the IP address of the victim machine, or for the computer that the crime has been identified in part of the crime. So you guys can see, first of all, it will give you the time right now. So this is important. He got the time and time. He got also the session accepted, the session time out. He got also the kilobyte sent, the kilobyte received. So he got a lot of information including the date and time on the victim machine or on the crime machine. So this is important to get the date and time. This is the first volatile data we will get. Also, if you guys can see here, I wanted to check who is logged in user in the machine that's been under attack. So why? Because I wanted to really see who is connecting. Okay, who is connecting to this machine, and I can really later on verify if they were really a real user or this was an attacker. Okay, or maybe the attacker managed to compromise one of the hashes of the other user and he used it to connect to another machine. So I really wanted to see the list of all these users. And again, this is a volatile data. So if I didn't get it right now, it will be gone. So we need to collect the information about user logged in the system, both locally or remotely. Okay. No, note down the context of running processes, the owner of the file, the last access time on this file, the tools we are using for getting all the logged in users. There is multiple tools, BS logged in, okay, net sessions and logging session. So if you guys allow me, I will show you a screenshot from each one of them. So here, for example, here, this is the first one, logged in user, BS logged in tool. You can run this command, okay, which is he managed to go and hide this activity, but then he went to Windows Forensics Tools, which is basically a file in the investigator computer. He run the bs login.exe, and it will give you the name user logged in this machine. He logged in locally, and this is the time that he logged in, and this is the domain that he are using right now. So as you can see, guys, this PC login, okay, it allow you first of all this command remotely. So the maybe the investigator are sitting in his room, okay, and he want to check who is logged in to this machine right now. So I can issue this command, which is bs login from my computer. It will go here, list all the logins in this machine, and send the output to the investigator in his room. So you can run this locally or remotely, depend about the situation. If these computers are really part of the attacks and this computer is far from me, okay, physically, I cannot go and see this computer physically. I can run this computer, this command remotely, and I can take a screenshot for what is showing now from this machine. Okay, guys, so this is the first command. The other command over here is basically is to check the logged in user. This is a net session. So you write net session, and again, the net session can be run locally. Okay, so if you are in with the victim machine right now, you can say net session. It will show you all the session open in your machine and who is user is accessing, and also if it's an open or been idle for a long time, so you can see. Or you can run this command net session remotely on a specific machine, and you can do also the same thing. Okay, guys? Okay, so good. So how can we do this?
Yes.
If it gives information about username and IP used to access system via remote login session, and types of the client from which these are accessing the system. So there is another also command that you can use also, login sessions, okay? And this login session, it lists the currently active login session, and if we use B option as an option, it is specified in the list the process running for each one of these sessions. So if you can see here, guys, he run the command here, login sessions, and the login session would tell you this is the session maybe 1 or 2 or 3. Okay, the username who is having the session, the username. Okay, how he did authenticate the system? Authenticate to using NTLM. Okay, what is his SID, security identifier? This is his security identifiers. When he logged in time, it will show the logged in time. If there is any specific process he's running right now, it will show also the process. So if you can see this guy is over here, it's he's running services and يعني all of them are not running anything, but this specific users he's running is running as a service type. Okay, guys. So this is another thing that we can also see from here. Okay, I wanted also to check if the attackers are opening files within my systems, because this is an approach, as I mentioned, the attacker usually do once they compromise one system. They wanted to see they compromise one user here. Okay, so they compromise the system here. They can see which systems are this user can really interact with. So they check shares, different shares in the network. So you can do different shares. There is a command for shares in the network. Okay, you can write backslash the computer IP address or the computer name, and then hit enter. And if this computer is sharing any files or any folders from your computer, you can see. Okay, especially working in Windows environment, you can see a lot of shares because there is something called mutual authentication between different systems. So one user here can see a lot of shares in the different computers. So it's important to see what shares is open right now, because this is an indication for what kind of files the original user are opening, or maybe the attacker is opening right now. Okay, so the collecting information about the files open by the intruder using remote login, okay, tools and commands used for opening files information. So how can we do this, guys? This is also done by command lines like netfile command. Okay, it will show you all the file that has been opened within these computers. And again, this netfile command, you can do it locally on the victim name, or you can do it remotely using the network station. So netfile command displays the names of all open shared files on a servers and a number of files logs on this each. Okay, the syntax of this netfile command is netfile and then the ID, as you can see here, guys. So this is the files, net files, and it will open all the shares open from this machine. So this is, if it's a victim machine, I can see which machine it is being part of these attacks. And then later on, I can say, you know what, the attacker managed to see all the shares. So maybe he copied the stuff from these shares, and I can tell what kind of damage or extent of damage the attacker have done already to the organization so far, or what kind of information he compromised so far. Okay, so this is also the net file. We have also BS file utility. The BS file utility is also can be running in your computer or remotely, and you can see the BS file utility to list or close files that are remotely opened. Okay, this is the shared files, and you can run it remotely. So maybe the investigator are sitting as his room and just wanted to run this command. So he needed to write this file, and then he specified which remote computers has already he wanted to access and see the data on top of it. Okay, guys. Also, there's another command here. It's called open files. It will query or display open files, and also queries and display or documents files opened by network users. Syntax for this open files is basically open files and specify the computer name. Okay, guys. Also here you can see that is network information. Okay, when intruder gain remote access to the system, they want to know other systems that are available on the network. They can be seen by the system they have compromised. So what he's saying here, guys, once they compromise a machine, they do something called literally the attacker lateral movement, or they called it maybe pivoting in some area. It means I wanted really to see where I can go from this compromised machine. And that's why they started to sometimes scan your network. And that's why in yesterday when I talked about incidents, and I show you that I have an IP address within my network are scanning other machines and is scanning other port numbers. I told you this is an indication of compromise. Why? Because he compromised a machine. He wanted to know where he can go from this machine, and he wanted to identify another target to move to. Okay, so they started to scan. So once he started to scan, that means there is a traffic coming from this machine going to other machine in the network. So I wanted really to check the victim machine that's being compromised, to check for any single connection to the external network and identify this connection and keep it as an evidence. Okay, when connection are made to other system using net bias communication. So net bias, guys, is a protocol. It's been there for a long time. It's very similar, net bias, to DNS, because you can reach other computers within the network using the net bias protocol. Okay, the system will maintain a list of other systems they have seen. Mean in your net bias here, guys, if you started to communicate to other computers in the network, you will have a list for all the computers that you are communicating to at that time using this protocol. By viewing the content of cache name table, investigator might be able to determine the other system that have been affected by this attacker. Okay, guys, so this is very important. And in a very simple way, I'm an attacker. I connected already, compromised one machine, and I'm now looking for another machine to compromise. So this machine, the original machine, will have an indications, will have a connection that shows you what kind of communication I'm opening with other machine. And in this section, I wanted to also say that this network communication is volatile. Means if you start your computer, you will lose all this network details. So what you really need to do is, as a first responder or someone who is investigating the case, you need to go and collect these old connections and see what exactly this computer is communicating to. Because this is, as I mentioned, it will help the investigator to determine how much damage was in the network. Okay, so network information, as you can see here, NetBIOS names, table cache, maintain a list of all the connections. How you can really investigate the NetBIOS, you write NBT state, and then it will give you a list with all the communication happening in your computer. Okay, guys? It also contains a remote system options. So if you can see here, guys, NBT. So this is another command line. It's called netstate. And if you run netstate, and it will show you all the communication that your computer have with the external world. So this is also very useful. And you can, as you can see, it's collect information regarding network connection to and from the effective system. This is allow you to locate logged in attackers, because his communication will be appeared here. Okay. Also, any IRC routing communication. So if your computer is part of a boot networks, which basically your computer is a zombie, you can identify the IP address here also in the net state. Worm is logged in into command and control server, mean that if your computer also is communicating to command and control center by attackers, you will send the communications here. So net state is the tools, and you can just write a switch beside the tools called ANO, which is displays the TCP and UDP network connection, listening port, and identifier, and the logical address. And the foreign address here is showing your basically the local address, which is your computer, and the foreign address is the external IP address. So if I run this command, it will help me to see all the communication that my computer right now is doing with the external world. So if there is something suspicious, I can capture. Again, the net states, if I restart my computer, it will be gone, because now my computer will have no connection to the external after the restart. So it's really important to really get the network connectivity as well. Okay. Here is also another net state switch, different switch is -R here. Okay, displays a routing table and shows the persistence route enabled on the system. What we mean by really routing table and persistence routes. What I can tell you guys, that's your computer, every time it really need to communicate with the external world, okay, it will send the packet to a router, and then the router will be sending this data to the external world, okay? But in some cases, if you really compromised, and that the attacker wanted to really spy in you specifically, he can manipulate how your computer will react. Maybe he will add a certain route to your computer. So every time you wanted to communicate, you go to his machine that he compromised in the network, and then can send you to the internet. So also, it's a good advisable thing to check if everything is okay here. Okay, so if there is a certain route here or a certain routing table, you can just view it by netstate -r and see if the attacker have manipulated as well the routing table, which means how your computer interact with the external world, or how your computer interact with even internal networks. So this is also is good to have as well. Okay. Also, we have here process information. And the process information, as I mentioned, this is your application that runs in the task manager. Okay, and as you can see, there's so many applications on running right now. Some of this application, it looks naive, but some of them really maybe it's a naive process, but in meantime it's a worm or maybe a malware running in your machine. So I wanted really to capture these processes, because once I restart, all these processes also will be gone. And there is very also famous techniques from the attacker they will do. They will compromise one certain processes, guys, and once they compromise processes because they wanted to hide themselves very well within your environment, they will do migration to processes. So what the migration means, they are initially they were in the PDF process, but the PDF can someone close the application anytime and they will lose their connection. So they wanted more stable process. So they will move their process from PDF to something like Chrome, or something like maybe I would say SVCS host service. So this SVC host, or maybe Chrome, is more stable service, or maybe more stable process than this one. So if you're looking really at the processes, you can tell what's happening in your computers. And I mentioned there is so many tools, even from Microsoft, to check the processes and to check for creation of a new process. And I mentioned one of the indication of the attacks that you really wanted to collect logs from yesterday when we were talking is to look at for new process or new application that's installed in a system, and get this as an evidence and investigate it. So the new processes, how can I check the processes? طبعا the easiest way, which is very simple, is to look at the task manager here. But there is more, I would say, advanced way that the investigator wanted really to check what process right now is running, what is running under each process. Okay, so if the attacker managed to migrate himself to another process, it can choose using this. So the first early beginning, we will look at something called task list. The task list is very similar to what I just showed you here, which is the task manager. Okay, this task manager is exactly like a task list. You write task list here. It will give you all the lists for the systems that's running in your computer right now, or application running in your computer. It will show you the BID, which is process ID, and this is also important. We'll see later on in the ethical hacking why process ID is important, and how the attacker, they really manipulate this process ID and jump from process ID to another process ID. So it will list the process. This is the first early beginning. I can take a screenshot out of it. It's important because this is a volatile data. It can be gone. Also BS list, also another tools. It will show you a list of all the running processes on a systems. BSLS, blist -x. It will show you the thread and memory used by each process, so you can tell which processes are really occupying how much memory, and you can tell how many threads. Threads is basically is part of is part of your process. Okay, if you're running a program 3 4 times, you'll find 3 different threads to the same process. Okay, so you can see it as well here. So you can take a list out of it, guys. And this is how a process task list looks like. So it shows you some systems. SMSS.exe is running. Okay, and this is the BID is 236. Okay, and then this is memory usage. It will tell you how much memory is using over here. So this is all good. And then also each process, each application, guys, in order for an application to run, okay, there is a certain DLLs that it need to run also that the process are using to run. So this is maybe if you guys know about how execution files are working in Windows, you find with each execution files like exe files, there is some DLLs function that need to be called every time this process will run. This DLLs maybe is part of your Windows operating system, and then also hijacking this DLLs is part of what attackers they do to build their privilege escalation. So I wanted to see which process are running right now and which DLL are really related to this process, because this is can tell me if this is a legit process or it's an hijacked process by looking at the DLL. So I can really list all the DLLs here. So you can list all the DLLs. So it will give you which process are running and which DLLs and where is the DLLs are located. So you can see most of these DLLs are coming from Windows folder sys32. Process information, again, as I mentioned, it's important to handle it. Process to port mapping, as I mentioned, this is how you can list a process, and at the same time, guys, you can see which network connectivity are linked to this process. So process to port mapping trace which process is using which port. So this is if a certain process really related to an attacker, and these attackers are using certain IP address, you can link between the process, the port, the IP address of the attacker. So it's important to really to look at this information. And also this kind of data is volatile. So if it's you really restarted your computer, you will lose it. So in this example, we write net state -O here. It will show you the which port, which protocol you are using, which local IP address, which foreign IP address, what is the states, and the process ID related. So this mapping is important. It can tell you if you are being, if one process is certainly compromised by a foreign IP address only. Okay, guys? So we keep going here. There is so many, as I have added here, so many tools that we use to really capture all the volatile data, but we also have a section here for non-volatile data. And non-volatile data is one that is, even we restarted our computer or we even shut down the computer, will still the same. This is an example of the hard drive, or maybe a DVD, or maybe USB. It's not gonna be affected by the electricity or losing this electricity. And this is especially, as I mentioned, the hard drive. So what kind of data you need to extract from the hard drive, how to extract the deleted files, you will find it all under this section of non-volatile information, and what tools we are gonna use in this. Okay, guys? So I wanted, if you have time today, to look at the non-volatile informations. I will add another small presentation for how to extract non-volatile information. Okay, guys, so far so good. Okay, I know this is a little bit more than what it exists in the already in the platform, but I didn't want to repeat the same thing that we talked about in digital forensics. I just wanted to give you a small, I would say, a small extra information about digital forensics and how someone will start his investigation, what kind of tools he needs, and what kind of data he will look for first, how he can extract this data, and then he will move to the hard drive that we mentioned that he needs to create bit bit image from the hard drive, and what tools he will use. So this is just a little bit info about digital forensics. But the most important thing, that you really need to understand that incident response and digital forensics, they are going together. What really triggered the digital forensics is what kind of incidents I have. If I have an incident that we find someone are trying to steal our intellectual property, if someone is involved in something is considered as a crime by law, I need really to start to collect the evidence in a proper way, and I really need to maintain this evidence, and I really need to maintain also the chain of custody. This is the whole idea behind the talk today, and thank you guys for being here, and I hope you guys enjoy your break, inshallah.
Thank you, Mr. Asad. Mr. Ashadi.
I don't know.
I'm confused today because I have a problem. Because I have a problem from lab from yesterday. So thank you.
I can understand. No worries, guys. It's fine. It's fine. I'm not jealous anyway. So yes, that's good that you are interacting also with Mr. Asad. This is a good sign. Okay, guys.
Mr. Shadi,
yes, sure.
Have you uploaded yesterday's video of the morning session?
No, I haven't uploaded yet. I will upload it. No worries. I'll upload the one from yesterday morning.
Okay.
You're welcome. Have a great day, guys.